Loving You is Easy. Written by Just Thinking Drabbles. Read by Rashi. Felix walked through the monastery at a slow, languid pace. His footsteps felt heavy, as if weighed down by invisible chains. Everything felt distant, strangely muffled even, as he found himself going forward with no real direction in mind. There was little on his mind, save one thought, ugly and repetitive, which threatened to swallow him whole. My father? He's dead. It didn't seem real. It had happened too quickly, too easily. Why had it been so easy? The man had fought in countless battles up until then, had lived years avoiding the sting of death's hand. And now, he was gone. And there would never be another chance to talk to him again, or tell him all the things he had always wanted to, but was too prideful to allow himself. For all their disagreements, and the anger he felt at his father for never understanding how he felt, how he hurt, when Glenn passed, he had still loved him. He didn't really say it, not in words at least, and in fact had said the opposite during many heated moments. But even so, the feeling was still there. Surely he had known how much Felix cared about him. Right? The fact that he could never know the answer to that question hurt him deeply. It was worse than receiving a gruesome injury in battle. Any of those he could bandage up, or have a healer check it over, and then be on his way. But this ache in his heart could not be patched up with a bandage, and for the second time in his life, he felt completely powerless. He didn't know he had entered the cathedral until he heard the echo of his footsteps bouncing off the high ceilings. As he took a seat in one of the pews, he blinked a few times to clear his hazy mind. He would not consider himself a religious man, per se. The goddess was, well, she was there, he supposed, and sometimes he thought to pray to her. But what would he even say? What could he tell her that she already knew? Besides, no amount of rambling to her would bring his father back from the dead. He had tried pleading that about Glenn far too many times as a child for him to be that naive now. So instead of praying, he decided to sit there and listen to the hymns of pious clerics, wondering vaguely what the goddess thought of their songs, of their voices, or if she even really cared to hear them at all. "Oh, Felix!" Ashe's soft-spoken voice broke through the cacophony of the choir. He looked at him, this beautiful man who he'd only recently started to court, and the warm smile resting on his face became the greatest comfort to Felix. More than anything he had received since returning to the monastery, his other friends had tried to console him, but their words helped little when compared to the emptiness that threatened to overtake him. Yet Ashe always seemed to know what to say, what to do, even when he didn't, and he loved him for that. He wasn't sure what made him do it, but all the same, he knew that one minute he was sitting there, staring at Ashe in his endearing, friendly smile, and the next he was wrapping his arms around him and attempting to hold back tears which pooled at the edge of his eyes. Felix? Ashe said, breathlessly. It seemed his action had taken them both by surprise. After the shock had worn off, though, Felix felt his arms wrap around him tightly, and it made an uneven breath escape his lips. He didn't want to cry. It wouldn't help anything. It wouldn't change the past. So, why did he still feel tears threatening to fall? "It's going to be okay," he heard him whisper, as his hands petted his back gently. And then, as if waiting to hear those exact words, Felix started to cry. When Felix felt his tears begin to subside, he pulled away and blushed a little when realizing what he had just done. He sighed heavily and took a seat in one of the pews once more, with Ashe following his lead. It was silly to feel embarrassed over needing comfort at a time like this, but he couldn't help himself. He wasn't great at dealing with his emotions, and sometimes they were so overwhelming that he couldn't contain them any longer. Thankfully, Ashe understood. In fact, he probably understood more than most. "I'm sorry," Felix said, as he wiped a lingering tear from his lashes. Ashe placed his hand on his shoulder and gave it a reaffirming squeeze. "It's all right. Don't worry about it. I care about you, Felix, and I know right now that you're hurting a lot. It's okay if you need to cry." "But it won't help anything," he retorted, and the words came out louder than he had meant them to. He bit his bottom lip nervously before attempting to speak again, with a calmer tone. "The way I feel, all these tears, they can't change what happened. They won't bring him back. I should be training instead of sitting here doing nothing." "Training yourself to the point of exhaustion won't bring him back either, though." "Maybe not." He turned his face away, shrouding it in the shadows, which were not yet caught by the candlelight surrounding them. "But it will make me stronger. And if I'm stronger, then perhaps... He took in a long, shaky breath to steady himself. "Perhaps I can still be able to protect everyone else." "Felix," Ashe said softly. There was no judgment in his tone, nor pity either. There was only compassion and understanding. "I won't tell you that it's going to get easier, that all the pain and anger and sadness you're feeling suddenly goes away one day. I honestly don't think it ever disappears. But knowing that you aren't alone can help. That's what helped me. The fact that you were there for me." Ashe gave him another bright smile then, and Felix felt his heart flip at the sight. "Ashe." He wasn't sure what to say to that. He was never very great with words, after all. But he wanted to try. For Ashe, he would try. "Thank you." He placed his hand over his and held it tightly, hoping that it might convey all of the gratitude he felt. "Of course. You were there for me when Lenato died, and it meant a lot to me. You didn't say much, merely sat with me while I sat in the cathedral. But having you there, well, I really appreciated it." Felix didn't trust his voice not to crack when he spoke, so instead, he nodded. They fell into a comfortable silence as they listened to the end of the choir song, and for the very briefest of minutes, everything inside of Felix stilled, and he felt content. He was still holding Ashe's hand, and he wanted to hold it forever. Always. To kiss the top of it and thank him for being there for him. But as always, his words failed him, and he did none of these things. He had a feeling, however, that Ashe already knew. "I felt the same way with Glenn, you know. Helpless. Like I could have done something to save him." "I know that feeling, both with Lenato and Kristoff. Sometimes I still think that I could have saved them, if I had known better what they were feeling, what they were thinking. Of course, logically, I know that I probably couldn't have changed their minds, but I still wish that I could have." Felix hummed thoughtfully. "As do I. But my father would never regret what he did, and I know he'd do it again. He'd say he was glad to have protected the king, that having done so was the duty of a knight." He met Ashe's gaze then, and tried his best to soften his scowl and temper the frustration he felt. "Listen, I know you admire all that knighthood stuff, same as him and my brother. But Ashe, I can't lose another person that I love, to the ideals of duty and loyalty." Ashe gasped, and his eyes widened at the confession. They had not discussed their feelings for one another so openly before, and hearing Felix say "I love you" was a rare, beautiful thing, like finding treasure in the deepest depths of the ocean. You love me?" He couldn't help but ask again. His love brushed, as he turned away to try and hide his face once more. Of course. Of course I do." Ashe chuckled, and brushed his hand through Felix's hair to pull his attention back to him. "I love you too, and I promise that I'll stay safe for you. I won't leave you." There were no words that felt profound enough to respond with, And so, Felix took action instead. He leaned forward and brought their lips together, kissing tenderly, passionately. Ashe made a small noise of surprise, which soon melted into a pleased sigh as he wrapped his arms around his neck. Goddess, did he love this man. And even though the world around them felt like it was falling apart, and that it would never again make any sense in that moment, Felix felt grounded, safe. It was a funny thing to feel protected with someone else when all his life he had felt the need to be the protector. It was wonderful, too, and he will forever be grateful to Ashe for being there to comfort and love him.